In a warm atmosphere, amid the packed schedules of the BTS members, public attention turned to a simple yet meaningful moment when J-Hope expressed his support for Suga, a sincere gesture that highlighted the closeness of two friends who have long shared a journey in the demanding world of South Korea's entertainment industry. And although the statement was nothing more than a short remark emphasizing that he always wished the best for his friend, the meaning embedded in it felt profound, because it came from someone who truly understands the weight of work rhythms and the constant pressure of public scrutiny that follows a star, especially at a time when Suga has been deeply focused on his solo activities that continue to attract significant media coverage. This spotlight became the starting point for the public to once again pay attention to the personal interactions among BTS members outside the stage, something that, for many fans, actually creates a sense of emotional closeness, as their relationship is not merely about professionalism in a major group, but also about a friendship nurtured over years of training, concert tours, recording sessions, and private moments of rest that only they could understand. In the everyday life that often goes unnoticed by cameras, such support serves as a reminder that behind the grand achievements seen by the world lies a simple layer of life, namely human relationships filled with care and loyalty. While Suga remained immersed in his music preparations, J-Hope was seen engaging in various other activities, such as attending creative team meetings, going through dance practice, and interacting with fans through social media, where he consistently presented himself with a positive aura. And in each of those moments, the public sensed that he sustained the spirit of being a stable presence, spreading cheerful energy, while on the other hand, when he mentions Suga, his body language and manner of expression emphasized that he did not view his friend merely as a colleague, but as an essential part of his life. This tone of support soon grew into a point of discussion among fans, who felt that openness and sincerity like this were exactly why the group continued to maintain such strong appeal in the hearts of many, not only because of their music, but also because of the values of friendship they upheld, even in the midst of overwhelming global fame. In the day's timeline, after giving his comment about Suga, J-Hope continued with a professional routine that included visiting the studio to meet producers, reviewing drafts of music under development, and moving on to the practice room to keep choreography at the highest standard. And although the schedule seemed heavy, his expression conveyed a sense of steadiness and determination. Many fans then spoke about how, within such busyness, he still reserved space in his thoughts to appreciate his friend, something that might appear small, but in reality holds great meaning, as it showed that amid the harshness of the entertainment industry, warm personal relationships still have a place. This in turn became an example of how even the simplest gestures of support could capture public attention, especially when audiences crave the human side of their idols. And by the end of the day, the moment stood as proof that J-Hope was not only recognized as an energetic performer, but also as a loyal friend whose presence strengthened the personal circle of the members considered a family by millions worldwide, making that brief remark about Suga a reminder that true friendship can walk hand in hand with fame without ever losing its meaning. As the day moved forward, J-Hope's supportive remark toward Suga remained present in the ongoing conversations within both media outlets and fan communities, gradually shaping into a broader reflection on how their friendship has always been visible in subtle yet consistent ways. And while the spotlight on Suga's solo work continued to dominate headlines with updates about his studio hours and meetings with producers, J-Hope's own activities ran parallel in a rhythm that balanced creativity and discipline, showing how each member managed to sustain their individuality without losing sight of their connection to one another. J-Hope began his morning with a session in the dance studio, revisiting older choreography while experimenting with new moves that may or may not find their way into future projects. And those who observed noted how his discipline was not simply for performance, but also for maintaining a state of flow in his life, a kind of grounding routine that offered him balance amid the non-stop pace of schedules. And from there, he moved on to a design meeting where he reviewed concepts for potential fashion collaborations, once again showing the versatility that has become his signature, switching easily between roles as performer, creator, and collaborator, while still maintaining a lightness focus and his demeanor that kept the room's atmosphere from feeling heavy. Later in the day, when media reports once more touched on his supportive words for Suga, the narrative began shifting toward a recognition of how friendships within the group function as invisible threads that hold their vast world together. And though the entertainment industry often highlights achievements, awards, or chart numbers, this instance reminded many that fans are equally invested in the human side of idols, in the way they carry themselves as friends, siblings, and companions. As the afternoon settled, JHOPE continued into the recording booth to refine a track he had been experimenting with, layering sounds, adjusting tempo, and quietly nodding along to the rhythm as engineers took notes. While his focus suggested that even in moments of solitude, his energy was directed toward building something that could eventually be shared with a wider audience. Once outside the studio, his demeanor remained calm, stopping briefly to acknowledge a few staff members who had been with him through years of activities, reinforcing the perception that kindness and steadiness were consistent elements in his character, qualities that naturally aligned with the way he publicly appreciated Suga. By the time evening approached, conversations on social media reflected how fans found comfort in witnessing such mutual respect, turning the remark into more than a passing statement, but into a representation of how genuine relationships can resonate widely when placed in a global spotlight. And the day gradually wound down, with JHOPE wrapping up his activities, maintaining his characteristic composure as he left the studio, his steps steady, and his presence quietly affirming that while the stage and cameras will always demand brilliance, it is the consistency of everyday gestures, the acknowledgement of a friend, and the ability to balance professional duty with personal connection that create a portrait of longevity in the lives of artists whose reach extends far beyond the music they produce. The following day unfolded with a continuity that kept JHOPE's earlier words about Suga alive in the public space, as the remark had by now been carried across various online platforms, shared in fan discussions, and interpreted by cultural commentators, who viewed it as a reminder of how human connections within the music industry can hold more resonance when promotional campaigns. And while Suga remained occupied with the intricacies of his solo work, sessions that often extended late into the evening with a focus on refining lyrical detail and production layers, JHOPE structured his own hours with a mix of creative and practical commitments, beginning with the review of stage visuals alongside a small team tasked with curating ideas for future performances, a process that demanded both technical precision and artistic intuition. And yet, even in such focused circumstances, his demeanor reflected calm attentiveness, as if the intensity of the work did not overwhelm his personal rhythm. The media, picking up on his earlier supportive gesture, continued to connect the dots between their schedules, drawing comparisons between Suga's immersion in studio craft and JHOPE's outward presence in collaborative projects, suggesting that their dynamic offered a kind of balance for the group's broader identity, one grounded in respect and mutual understanding. As midday arrived, JHOPE was seen at a casual lunch with a few members of his creative circle, the gathering described by those present as relaxed, with laughter punctuating their conversations about upcoming plans. And although the setting was private, the atmosphere carried the tone of someone comfortable in his element, reinforcing why his public gestures of support never seemed forced, but arose naturally from his personality. After the meal, he transitioned smoothly into a photo shoot scheduled with a lifestyle magazine, his expressions alternating between polished professionalism in front of the camera and light-hearted exchanges with the staff in between takes, all of which continued to enhance his image as approachable despite global fame. Meanwhile, online fan communities reflected on how his acknowledgement of Suga had sparked conversations about friendships and high-pressure careers, with many drawing parallels to their own experiences of finding stability in trusted relationships, thereby creating an echo effect where an idol's personal expression intersected with the daily realities of ordinary people. By late afternoon, JHOPE entered another round of practice, his movements sharp yet fluid, his commitment visible in the sweat on his shirt and the concentration etched across his features, a moment that reminded observers how, behind every public appearance, lies countless hours of repetition and discipline. And as the evening light began to fade, the days settled into a quieter pace, with J-Hope leaving the practice space, accompanied by a few close staff, his stride measured, his face calm, and the narrative surrounding him continued to circulate across media headlines, framing him not only as a performer or a celebrity, but as a loyal friend whose ability to uplift another's journey stood as an essential part of his own identity, thus closing another chapter in a cycle where personal support and professional activity intertwined seamlessly, giving fans and onlookers alike a fuller understanding of the man behind the stage persona. As the momentum of attention carried into the next cycle of hours, J-Hope's earlier expression of support for Suga remained a reference point in ongoing narratives, no longer just a passing remark, but a statement that continued to illustrate how companionship in a world of constant visibility could still be anchored in sincerity. And as Suga's progress on his solo path kept the studios filled with creative discussions, layered instrumentals, and detailed adjustments, J-Hope balanced his own schedule with a combination of structured work and moments of reflective pause, beginning the morning with a review session of choreography that had been captured on video the previous day, watching closely for alignment, timing, and precision, while also discussing with instructors how small refinements could sharpen the overall effect. And throughout this process, his focus suggested a commitment not only to personal excellence, but also to the collaborative standards he valued deeply. As midday approached, he transitioned into a meeting with brand partners, where discussions revolved around visuals, themes, and upcoming campaigns. His presence calm, yet attentive, his responses carrying the kind of professionalism that has become his hallmark over the years. And even in such business-oriented spaces, there lingered an impression that his grounding force came from something more personal, namely the friendships that continued to guide him. Later, when news cycles again revisited his earlier support for Suga, the tone of coverage shifted toward a recognition of consistency, noting how this was not an isolated gesture, but part of a long pattern in which members of the group lifted one another through words, presence, and quiet actions. And such observations reinforced the understanding that the durability of their global influence has roots in qualities that extend beyond performance metrics. And as the afternoon settled, J-Hope moved into another studio environment, this time not for choreography or photos, but for music review, listening through drafts, adjusting notes, and sharing ideas with producers in a way that kept the process fluid yet deliberate. While outside, fan conversations kept intertwining his creative activities with the warmth of his supportive remark, interpreting the two as complementary aspects of his personality. By early evening, he took a brief period of rest, sitting with a small circle of staff in a quiet lounge, sharing light snacks and exchanging thoughts about the day. His composure steady, his expression relaxed, a reminder that even within structured schedules, there exists space for grounding oneself. As night descended, the rhythm of the day concluded without spectacle, yet carried meaning, because what remained was not only the record of tasks accomplished, but also the continuing echo of a gesture that had begun with a few words about Suga and had since evolved into a symbol of how loyalty and friendship sustain artists in an industry that often demands relentless pace. And so the hours closed with J-Hope walking calmly out of the building, his posture upright, his steps unhurried, embodying the balance between visibility and authenticity, a balance that fans and observers alike recognized as the true foundation of his lasting resonance. At the continuation of his steady rhythm, J-Hope entered another day with the same balance of structured activity and quiet sincerity that had characterized his recent hours. And although the initial comment he made about wishing the best for Suga was by now several cycles old, its echo remained present across discussions both online and offline, resurfacing in editorials, casual conversations among fans, and even within professional professional circles that regarded it as an emblem of how companionship sustains creative endurance. And while Suga's time was still largely absorbed by his detailed immersion in production, refining lyrics and adjusting layers of instrumentation, J-Hope's schedule leaned toward visibility as he began with an early studio visit where he observed the progress of a collaborative project, offering small inputs while keeping his tone measured. And from there he shifted seamlessly into a fashion fitting, the room filled with racks of clothing, stylists noting adjustments, and J-Hope calmly rotating between outfits, his posture highlighting a natural ease with presentation. The remark about Suga continued to surface even in this context, as stylists and staff quietly referenced how rare it was for friendships to be maintained with such warmth in the relentless cycle of the entertainment industry. And as the fitting concluded, J-Hope stepped into a rehearsal space where music played in repetition, his movements sharp yet fluid, pausing occasionally to catch his breath, reviewing footage on a tablet, and then returning to motion with renewed focus, his dedication evident to those watching from the side. Midday arrived with another round of meetings, this time centered on scheduling and promotional planning, the atmosphere practical, filled with notes and adjustments, and yet even in the density of logistics, his calm composure anchored the room, showing once more why his presence was considered reassuring. Outside those walls, conversations on digital platforms evolved into reflections, with fans noting how such small gestures of loyalty provided them with comfort in their own relationships, turning a celebrity statement into a shared human lesson. And as the afternoon wore on, J-Hope continued into a quieter period, sitting with a compact circle of team members in a relaxed environment, sipping tea and speaking in low tones. The setting offering a pause before the pace resumed. By evening, his schedule brought him back into the recording booth, where layers of sound were reviewed, vocal takes adjusted, and discussions with engineers unfolded with steady focus. And though the work was technical, his demeanor carried the same sincerity that had marked his earlier gesture towards Suga, creating a continuity that blended his professional identity with his personal values. As night drew closer, the activities tapered into closure, with J-Hope leaving the space surrounded by a small group of staff, his steps measured, his expression calm, and the narrative that had begun with a few words about his friend remained alive, not because of media amplification alone, but because of the way it reflected something lasting, namely that in a life filled with endless performance and responsibility, the quiet constancy of friendship can remain the most grounding force. A reality that by now had become inseparable from his public image and personal truth. As the hours unfolded into another cycle, J-Hope's activities continued with the pace that balanced intensity and composure. And although the industry's headlines moved quickly from one topic to the next, the essence of his earlier remark about Suga still lingered as a point of reference, carried naturally into conversations that touched on loyalty and the human side of stardom. And within this backdrop, J-Hope began his day in a rehearsal hall where mirrors lined the walls and music pulsed steadily, his movements flowing with precision, repeating sequences until alignment felt instinctive, while instructors noted details and staff captured footage for later review. And the room, though filled with the sound of rhythm and instruction, carried an atmosphere of focus rather than strain, a testament to the discipline that had shaped him for years. Once the session concluded, he took a short break, greeting staff with a quiet smile before moving toward a scheduled content shoot, where lights, cameras, and set designs awaited. His posture adaptable, shifting seamlessly between professional poses and candid ease, the team remarking on how such steadiness simplified the process, keeping the energy of the room light while still delivering the required output. During this period, the media continued to highlight Suga's progress in his solo work, but often interwove J-Hope's supportive remark as part of the broader narrative, emphasizing that their journeys, though distinct, remained connected by bonds of companionship. And as midday passed, J-Hope stepped into a production office where schedules were reviewed, collaborative proposals assessed, and creative notes exchanged. His presence attentive but never overbearing, an approach that reinforced his role as both leader and teammate within varying projects. Later in the early afternoon, he spent time in a quieter corner of the building, a lounge area where he rested briefly, sipping a warm drink while checking through personal notes, the simplicity of the moment grounding him before he resumed the structured pace. And as he returned to the studio environment, he engaged once more with producers, listening carefully to playback, suggesting adjustments in tone and layering, his feedback steady, shaped by years of familiarity with the process. Outside these closed rooms, fan communities continued to echo his earlier words, using them as a touchstone for reflections on support, with many articulating how the gesture reminded them of the value of standing beside friends during demanding times. And such interpretations further strengthened his image as someone who embodied consistency not only in artistry, but in human presence. As evening approached, J-Hope concluded his day with a relaxed meeting alongside a small creative circle, discussing upcoming ideas in a casual yet productive manner. The conversations flowing evenly without the urgency often associated with high-profile planning. And by the time the building grew quiet, he stepped out into the night air, his stride calm, his expression composed, and the resonance of his earlier statement about Suga still accompanied his narrative, not through dramatization, but through the steady accumulation of gestures and actions that made it clear his life, even amid fame and demand, remained anchored by values that were both simple and enduring, leaving another day to close on the note of balance, loyalty, and authentic presence.